At the oil up a new sisi a washa simple warutu. Yasan shots there was wasn't shuenya, oil no wenya be one ho. Wasn't shuenya, if you were baby or jedem wenya or dorsal ankasankasa, and when you know cream.
Not for yes, and it's the yenya oil, not to the yenya GB. Yenny dear, my yam for me now when you are.
With the front one, some of the yachting. No moment, Query, I shall not Robertson. Your share, Nino Duna and some more canal. And then you couldn't be, I don't know. Or ye my money, no more were in a far for about oil.
Oil and gas. We all know that Ghana has discovered oil since 2007 in commercial quantities. And we believe that it should be a blessing to Ghanaians and not a curse.
The oil found, at first we thought it was going to be a blessing, but now we are realizing that it has rather turned into a case.
Well, I think you know, the oil industry is going to can be a tremendous benefit for Ghana if the revenues that are generated from oil are used wisely.
The discovery and subsequent production of oil offshore the western coast of Ghana is expected to provide enormous opportunities for high economic growth in the areas of revenue, infrastructure, job creation, and livelihood enhancements. This expectation could be achieved through the development of a comprehensive legal and regulatory framework that will ensure maximum benefits, including maximization of revenues, local content development, and participation, whilst minimizing negative impacts on environments and livelihoods. This documentary therefore explores citizens' perspective of the social, environmental, and economic impacts of the emerging oil and gas industry.
First of all, I think it's important to credit Ghana with some significant achievements. And it's very difficult for any country to get ready for oil when they've never had reason to get ready for oil. But with the discovery in 2007, Ghana worked hard, parliamentarians, the government, and civil society, to try to make sure that there's proper legislation in place. The Petroleum Revenue Management Act has very important transparency safeguards. For example, the government must disclose the payments that they receive from oil companies and how much oil is produced on a quarterly basis. This is the kind of transparency safeguard that very few countries actually have. The government was also able to pass a Petroleum Commission Act to make sure that there was an independent regulator in place. But there are pieces of the legislation that are outstanding. For example, the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act is still pending in Parliament. And that means that the sector doesn't have the proper regulation needed, for example, to require open and transparent bidding for new licenses, to require the publication of contracts so everybody can see the kinds of deals that Ghana is getting.
The petroleum industry provides enormous opportunity for economic growth. This is evident in the 2011 growth of 14% that was experienced in Ghana. And this is likely a contribution from the oil sector. But this growth can further be enhanced. What we need to put in place is a proper legal and regulatory framework that would ensure that locals can participate in the oil industry and also ensure that the environment is protected and livelihoods are also protected. Also, maximization of revenue is one key thing, and we need to ensure that each drop of oil is accounted for, and therefore the monies that are accrued from the oil is used sustainably.
What have been the challenges of managing the petroleum revenues?
The key one has to do with the estimation of the benchmark revenue, which determines how much of the money goes into the budget and how much is split into the petroleum fund. We realized that for 2 years running, there's been overestimation of the benchmark revenue. It was because of the fact that the government is still expecting some money from corporate taxes. But what we found was that the companies are not in tax-paying position because of capital allowances that they're allowed to recover within the first 5 years of the operation. So In 2011, there was an expectation of some 600 million Ghana cedis in corporate taxes. They got 0. And this year, they're projecting to get 300 and something million Ghana cedis. And from what we've seen so far, we're not going to get any corporate taxes because the companies are simply not in a tax-paying position.
What we were looking at is how oil money that is generated and goes to the government in Accra actually reaches the districts in the western region. And so for those district assemblies, such as Jomoro district, how are they managing the money they're receiving, and how can we increase the role and the power of assemblymen and their constituents to have a say in how that money is spent, so that it reflects the priorities that are expressed by the communities themselves.
Definitely, the challenge for oil and gas industry is to avoid the resource curse by managing the environmental and social concerns associated with the resource exploitation. Therefore, 2 years into the oil production, these have been some of the impact on environment and community livelihoods.
For the meantime, we are exploring and exploiting oil from the same area that fishers also operate. That's the sea, and therefore they have something in common. There's something positive if you think of the overall benefit to the country as a whole, which the fishermen also will benefit as regards getting their inputs to operate with. They also have some concerns that their fishing area is dwindling because they are not allowed to go through too close to the breaks.
What we have realized is that, especially in the western region, coastal communities and fishing communities are experiencing impact from the offshore oil and gas production. And this is something that we need to look at. We need to find sustainable solutions for these impacts.
It's yet a frank winning Cadorbe, and in this oil for Sumpo Mahena, Igmania, Odubia, or to a half for German. And the German and Frank, Tufu Aye, Kumea, Oye, and when I can Biara. And now, you mention Abana Casasso, or Tumu, Wamahiti, or Frank Wihu. The mention one more assassin, when we you do, and my Aban, nay, companies, Yenzesia. Yes, into Obabo Dachi. Inunti, or how Henry Mob and there, says Sarah Murkase. As a Sabia wine from Wunis Kahu, another Nymphosuno, which is the effort, Yenja Bibiarian. Wabam Waban, when they be a bibimpa, let them a piano jama, on how whip him. No moment is Shapa Papaji, Yenya Biampo Bessie Sierra.
The oil find has greatly affected fishing in this community, and most of the people here are fishermen, and this problem has brought about hardship in the community because there had been some bad catch. The women are complaining and the fishermen are also complaining.
Well, there has been some effects on the fisheries resources. For instance, in recent times, there have been a number of boat accidents involving fishermen, boats, destruction of the fishing nets, and to the extent that in one particular case, a life was lost. Yeah. So, and then apart from that, the fishermen complain about the fishing grounds being taken over. We all know that internationally 500 meters is what is recommended as a no-go area or no fishing area for any rig. But then in our case, we are having a 1 mile radius, which we think that is not fair. It is really crippling the fishing industry.
And there was Mama Yankobio. Oh no, I have for free. Now, the Oho Yansi there. Oil and gas in Bessuan. Mama, Oya Insmian, which ship, P. Ridzi, Akonaba, wɔ ɛpo no do wɔrekɔ wɔreba no so yɛ hɔ de ma hen nti abɛda ɔwɔ dɛ afrafo no yɛyɛ ahwɛ yie wɔ yɛn nantobea do na yɛsrɛ dɛ company a ɔretu oil the gas wɔ hɔ no so ɔbɛyɛ ahwɛ yie ama ahema a yɛwɔ nkanka west region a yɛtwam kɔ Ivory Coast na yɛba wɔso wɔyɛ ahwɛ yie mfama yɛn na afei so bia wɔtu oil and gas nkyɛ hɔ na yɛkɔpo hɔ ndɛ nnam no nyinaa so ɛkɛgyina hɔ ɔnam kandeɛ a ɔwɔ hɔ nti na yɛ so nnam nti na yɛwɔ hɔ yi ɔma ma yɛbɛpɛ dɛ yɛbɛkɔ hɔ nti yɛnyinaa yɛ ɛhaw a aba afrafo yɛn asetem wɔ western region.
Now that this has come, it's going to affect our industry because very soon more rigs will be laid across our ocean here, and then the limitation is that every rig we have to go 500 kilometers from that place, so it minimizes our operation, and then as it goes across the whole Gulf of Guinea, then we have no place to do our business. So I think then the people, the operators are not cooperating with us, and they don't even give us way to dialogue with them. We cannot have anything affecting us. There was a split, oil split around Axim. We were asking them to come over. We never heard from them. We had a dialogue at Kofodia. We asked them to come and explain certain things for us not to get an oil case. They never turned up. So I don't think they are cooperating with us, and it's going to affect our industry. We know that. And the government must come in to see how they can subsidize our operation, because very soon all these places will be covered with rigs, and we have no place to operate.
Sisiala obudrum ribia efani hina obotonsu because demra talofo wo baby si hone rego he wo so onyina onfon konfon bra oil rigs and pir bebe nsum na so be nsum dam na se efar no obra hen edwuma aza hen nyame bi be bibi oho kakra.
Recently there are so many wheels dying and so many bentiment too, and so many seaweeds, which of course is preventing us from dragging the net to shore. That is at the end of it all, is affecting the fishing business.
Sisi ala yepui, enami bebre wo wa ori yu wepunu. Today, eban ina onyi tru yinam. The minami nyina sisi awori yu wepui ma yankofo kwa wonfe bimba. Ena nso ade bi wa bepunu mko efu bi a owo hwa na epu na eyi na aba. Yebisa ebisi de onye oya na ebisi oya na yehu hwe ya afre mpenyumfum wa abohwe woso worukọ na wa akohwehwem na wa aba yente ho hwe nti oya ho kese odema ehye na ye wo mpa no ho enye nso enyi wose oya na odu beebi a oye ebitumugu enye nso enyi yenyim nyimzi ochede si ihu de ihu da made a ochede oya ni bi na webugu pono do no nti ebi afre anade yede nti why a ho kese ode am.
In recent times, we've had a problem with sargassum. That reminds me of ballast water. For instance, if the vessels come and they discharge ballast water into our environment, they are likely to carry alien species of flora or fauna into our system. And that is most likely what we are seeing. This sargassum problem hasn't been there until recently, and it is also affecting fishing activities of our fishermen. Sargassum is a type of seaweed, a brown seaweed, which floats. It's a floating seaweed, and when it is on the surface of the water, it really hinders fishing activities.
Some of the negative social impacts have been loss of accommodation, because landlords are throwing out the existing tenants and giving their properties to big oil companies. That, I think, is a bit of a problem that needs to be addressed. I know one area has also been around land acquisition and land use. Huge tracts of land are being acquired by all sorts of people. The Ghana Gas Company, for example, is busily putting into action the processes of constructing the gas processing plant, which in itself will create a lot of jobs.
Though the Western Corridor Gas Infrastructure Project, which is being spearheaded by the Ghana National Gas Company, is progressing steadily, there are a lot of concerns which must be addressed. The first concern is that the gas processing plant at Atuabo is located in the Amanzule wetland, and this provides higher risks for biodiversity as well as the surrounding communities, that is Semda Swazo, Anochi, and Atuabo itself. The second concern is that the Environmental Assessment Regulations of 1999, that is the LI 1652, requires the conduct of an environmental impact assessment before the commencement of projects such as the gas processing plant. Unfortunately, these provisions in the regulations was not observed. The gas processing plant started earnestly without the conduct of the environmental impact assessment, which would have further enabled the Ghana National Gas Company to have an environmental permit, and this violates the provisions in the environmental assessment regulations.
In the light of these challenges, what could be done to avoid the oil curse and maximize benefit from the oil sector? In response to this question, stakeholders gave the following recommendations. Conduct a comprehensive fisheries impact assessment to outline detailed impact of oil and gas on fisheries for the development and implementation of effective mitigation measures.
The Fisheries Act 625 of 2002 makes provisions for fisheries impact assessment to be conducted for activities such as oil offshore in our marine environment. The fisheries impact assessment is proposed to be conducted in addition to environmental impact assessment, and this would outline the detailed impact on fisheries so that proper and effective mitigation measures can be outlined to address the impact on fisheries. This has not been done.
As an alliance, we have concerns about the processes, especially the fact that the issue of fisheries impact assessment had been completely ignored, and the processes had also not involved the impact on fisheries. We think that this is an issue that needed to be addressed properly. The government needs to get back on the drawing board with the oil companies, especially the Jubilee partners, so that they look at the implications that the oil exploration have had on fisheries to now. We also are concerned about the impact on other coastal activities that are related to the fisheries sector.
Improving communication and dialogue among stakeholders.
Gan ye be oil and gas no ho for supia, the mafrango no ho for supia. Mo tan de ye bo ho ban. Ne wa mo aban de nkambom na adwen sakor. Obaba edwumayefo na wo ye oil companies no na aban nye afardom na ye edwuma no. Se ye kabom ne se yenya adwen sakor a mfo so obaba no odoso o sende ehyan afarfo ne ye oil fo no ye hori edwuma wa nsukrum abiakor. Nti se adwene yakor mo obane se ye ha obi wotie na ase won so wo ha obi ye tasa aban na wo emani mu no so ne ho botan manyi hinara ahoton wa kan.
For us to coexist, I mean, if I say us, I mean the Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council and the oil companies, we need to dialogue a lot. We need to confer, collaborate, consult, so that at least we remove that kind of suspicion. Because every fisherman now thinks that the industry has come to collapse, the oil and gas find has come to collapse the fishing industry. Of course, I don't think that is the intent of the the oil companies or government. But because we do not interact, we are suspicious of each other, which is, I think, very bad.
Of course there is risk. There is always risk of bringing a new industry, such as oil, particularly oil, to an offshore area. But the benefit is high. So if the right thing is done with that gain, you can justify the trade-off. I mean, the fishing industry, yes, it's important. It's important for food security, whereas the oil industry is important for macroeconomic earnings for the country. So they're two quite different facets, which are both very important. So there's examples around the world where they can be used very well in harmony. In most cases, there is some part of oil revenue which is used for development benefits, and there's no reason why that can't be used to help with fisheries in some places.
Improving local content and ensuring participation of locals in the sector.
Na edwuma bebre wo hanuma oil funu wo hia wo kwamana ne na wakafa da menyama no wode ba na sei po yeti da hini nsu mpo wose wono mpo wose Ghana fo wo de enye nti wo kwamana ne na wakofa ba nti mehwehwe aba ne de onye biribi awada ma de no ho na nka afalufu isa na pudwuma ne sei a Neska kakra wono obotum se odubobwe nsu company bia na nka oyerfi wa abafa so obotum da ahwehwe vegetables bia na nka abofi wa abafa na nsu we nya niska na yi de menya paano mpo wase waje no kwakaje no beebi wa ba ye wopa mesi afo ye botum ya ato paano ye botum ya ye bibi paano de menje ndi da wode certificate na wadoton.
Transparent, accountable and sustainable revenue management and utilization toward poverty reduction and accelerated development.
We strongly believe that for the oil to be a blessing, one, there should be transparency. The mining methods should not affect local communities, but should rather bring them out of poverty, so that we don't have a repeat of the problems in some other parts of Africa.
To have a clear roadmap which will be provided in a development plan, long-term development plan, that is bipartisan, bought into by all Ghanaians. So if we agree that every money we receive from petroleum, we're going to spend it on health, that's a collective national decision. And then we're able to track the process, the progress of whatever development agenda that we've set for ourselves. And we'll be able to look back and have no regrets, rather than spending the money as and when we decide to spend the money.
Sikabiara obefi oil and gas mbaban aban obahwede ye aban obahwede ye na odi bi ato ho ama ndamba yedi bi ba ye adwuma wonda brim na wodi bi so ato ho ama ndamba so the fe so samedi ba farfuma da makada mai afofin ni ora aban utwe sika bi do to dem afarfo de onam de wo ye adwuma wa punumu hon se atoyan chembisi punumu ho a otu gwago afarfo no kapma bra for adwuma no obasan obaye
ya toto sa aban de on set fan bi a efa no yibinya faso efi ho.
Well, I think you know, the oil industry is going to can be a tremendous benefit for Ghana if the revenues that are generated from oil are used wisely. In a lot of countries, what they do, however, is that oil industries often have onshore impacts, and then there's also the danger on if there is an oil spill, or impacts in terms of social impacts or development impacts on public services like roads and ports. In those cases, usually what happens is that the local governments get a share of those revenues so that they can use those funds to upgrade roads or to deal with some of the socioeconomic impacts that are doing there. And I would hope that might be one thing that Ghana might want to look at, is to what extent does a share of the revenues that go into the national coffers from the offshore oil and gas, how much of that goes to the regions or the districts who are feeling most of the impacts.
Improving institutional capacity and stakeholder collaboration for effective management of the petroleum sector.
So we need to make sure that the environmental management plans that they're going to put in place to address some of these unintended outcomes, they are solid. So we only have to strengthen the EPA, and we have to make sure that we put pressure and demand accountability from EPA. I've always said that if the Jubilee partners let us down, I won't blame them, I'll blame the EPA, who is a statutory body empowered to protect our interests.
Also, on the environmental side, there are capacities that don't exist. The Environmental Protection Agency has very little capacity to monitor the environmental impacts of the oil industry. And civil society groups and communities are stepping in. For example, Friends of the Nation is working with community-level monitors so that they can report oil spills, other problems that are coming up because of the oil and gas industry. But government certainly needs to do its part to increase the capacity of the Environmental Protection Agency.